celebrating 16 years of possibility. Pilot Flying J and Hallerin Hilton Hill present Anything is Possible. Today's guest, Governor Bill Haslam, Part 2.
Anything is Possible is great stories about great people whose lives prove possibility. My name is Hallerin Hilton Hill, and this is Governor Bill Haslam. We're calling this the Exit Interview Part 2. Thank you for being here. It
is kind of unusual to lose a job where you not just lose your job, but you lose your house and the people that drive you around too.
Right. So I want to talk about family, and I want to talk a little more about faith, but I wanted to kind of dial in on this notion of calling. I was reading this book, and this author said, these notes, dun, 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 right? Those notes, he says, Beethoven couldn't have been the only person to ever hear those notes. But he said the notion is that God wakes up every morning and he looks down the long corridor and there are doors there and he just starts knocking on doors, knocking on doors. And if you are open, he drops things in. And when I heard that, I thought, wow, maybe that's a clearer description of calling, is just being open.
I think it is being open, and it's realizing that, you know, in this world, there's not this sense, people are like, well, I'll know when I'm called when I have the perfect job for me. And what I tell a lot of younger people is, I don't know if there is a perfect job for it. I mean, people say, is everything going great in your job? I go, no. You know, I love my job, but everything's not going great. There's some parts that are really hard. But I think it is that openness that you talked about, and kind of also a willingness to think, what are the things that God's used in my life so far that might give me a clue about what the next step would be? What
are the things God used in your life?
You know, it's interesting. Like I said, I spent 20 plus years in business thinking, I started working at Pilot thinking, I'm going to work here for 2 years and I'm going to go be a pastor. And I decided after a couple of years that being a pastor was not the right thing. But I spent the next, 20 years thinking, well, what am I supposed to be doing? Well, in the end, now I look back and go, I was supposed to be doing just what I was doing. And the things that I learned in the process of that helped me in the job that I'm in now. The things I learned about, hiring people and about understanding the financial numbers of an entity, whether it be a business or a government, et cetera. Although there's so many things I learned that helped me later in life, but I didn't really realize that's what I was doing there at the time.
When Pilot went through its crisis, and it's still working through all of that, how'd you manage that?
Felt like, I first get a text message on my phone that, from one of the news subscribers that said, FBI raid at Pilot, and literally I'm thinking, what in the world is going on? And, a couple hours later, I find out in the middle of it, I'm still being the governor, but it's like anything that you care about, when something happens, you feel like you've been kicked in the stomach. So the challenge for us was, this was a company that I cared about, my brother and father there, a lot of other people that I know and work with who are great people. It was an incredibly difficult period of time to keep saying, well, I need to do my job and I can't be distracted from that. But in the meantime,
this is your family. But
it's not unlike what people go through. A lot of people have something hard happen to them in life, but you got to keep doing whatever it is you're supposed to be doing that day.
I want to take a break. When we come back, I want to move into a deeper understanding of how you deal. You mentioned a couple of times, not every day is good.
Yeah.
I want to figure out what gets Bill Haslam. Yeah. Do you have real strategies that you use, things that you employ to get you through the bad days, to get to the better days?
Yeah.
I want to find out about that. This is Anything is Possible. This is Governor Bill Haslam. More in a moment.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up.
It's a little unfortunate, but to be president, you have to really, really want to be president.
So we were talking about just getting through tough stuff.
Yeah.
You're very optimistic. tactically, strategically, how do you process the bad stuff?
You know, and I'll add to it, because sometimes the hardest things are things that people don't necessarily even know about. I remember hearing a guy named Millard Poller, who ran Service Master forever, and heard him speak 25 years ago, and he said, leaders don't inflict pain, they bear pain. And sometimes there's things where you're, particularly in a public role, you're dying to tell the rest of the story. But in doing that, you're going to inflict pain on somebody, and so you don't. And so sometimes those are you have the hard decisions you wrestle with because there's big impact and you know you're going to get criticized. Sometimes the hardest ones are those things that I'm dying to tell the rest of the story, but that's not healthy for anybody. And so you don't. So how do you get through? I mean, it comes back to a little bit what we talked about earlier. If you feel like you've been called there, well, you've been called there no matter whether the battle's easy or hard. That's number one. Number two, it makes an incredible difference to have people like Chrissy. And to have really, really good friends. And I've been blessed with having that in Knoxville, Nashville, and other places of people that they're going to be my friend whether I was the governor or not.
Right.
And they don't, they're not impressed by that at all. And that's good. And then, like I said, we also have the blessing of having 3 kids, 3 great children-in-laws, and 7, almost 8 grandkids. And again, that's a centering thing, because when we're all together, I can assure you that there's nobody that cares that I'm the governor.
Yeah, I saw you, I think it was at First Watch with a couple of your grandkids, and you weren't governor.
No, I did, and I'm not. But that's actually, it's really healthy. These jobs can be dangerous when you start thinking you're all that, because you either have people that tell you you're the best in the world, or they're yelling at you and telling you you're garbage, okay? And the truth, neither of those is true, right? But to your family and to your friends, all that kind of goes aside, and that's why I think that the people that are the best in these roles are people that have a lot of healthy outside relationships.
I've known you for a long time, right? You and your family, you guys have been great to me, great friends as well. You know the one thing we've never talked about? We've never talked about money or wealth.
Yeah.
Do you care about it? You're a very wealthy person.
So it's interesting when I don't think of myself in those terms, okay? But I realize other people do. I mean, if you go Google Bill Haslam, it'll say, rich guy in there somewhere. But I don't think about that. But I realize when I meet people, like, they're going, oh, okay, well, this guy's, whatever. I just never have thought that was the thing that should matter about anybody. And, again, for whatever reason, God's decided to give us a lot of, material wealth. I feel like it's more like, okay, one of my jobs is to be a really good steward of that. And there certainly shouldn't be any pride associated with it. It feels more like this is one of those things that God's given you to test your faithfulness. And
who taught you that?
I think part of it is
because wealth can consume you.
It's hard. I mean, the unfortunate reality is with most families, wealth ends up destroying more than ends up building up. And it's hard to think of families of wealth, many that have turned out well, right? And so part of it is an awareness of that. Most of it, though, just comes back to that biblical truth that, all that is going to end up dust at some point. So the question is, are you being responsible with how you use it now?
Let's talk about the rest of your family. Kind of give me an update on your children, where they are, and the grandchildren linked to them.
Yeah, so people always ask me, particularly in Nashville, like, so are you going to stay here? Are you going to do something? And I go, we've got all our kids and grandkids in Knoxville. I can't tell you what a strong magnet that is. While I've loved what we've done, it kills us every now and then. They'll send us this, this picture of all of them, and they're all, together enjoying somebody's birthday. We're like, dang, So that's a huge magnet for us. All 3 of our kids and their spouses all live here, and who knows if that's forever. We have all of them are doing different things. We'll have to wait and see if that's
what are they up to?
My youngest daughter, Lee, and her husband, Matt's a pastor here in Knoxville. And again, we'll see where God ultimately pulls that into. David is married to my middle daughter, Annie. They've just bought an inn over in North Carolina. Yeah, so we're like hoping that we'll get some sort of friends and family discount. So far, we haven't gotten one of those. But David and Annie kind of have an entrepreneurial spirit. I wouldn't be surprised if they buy a couple, 3 businesses and do that. Again, Lee and Matt have 2 boys, and depends on when this airs, they're getting ready to have their 3rd boy here in June. And Annie and David have a son, and then they adopted a little girl who's about 10 months old now. That is incredible. Anybody that wonders like how you'll be as a grandparent when your kids adopt grandchildren, don't worry, you'll love them. I promise you. And then Will and Hannah live here, and they have 3 kids. And Will had been at Pilot and has decided that's not the right thing for him, and he's thinking through what the next step will be. And Will has a real heart for service, so we'll kind of see. Sounds a lot
like you.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of parts of him that do remind me of me. We'll see. But you know what's fun is to see all them figuring out. It can be kind of a burden's the right word, but you know, when you're a Haslam, it comes with certain expectations, and people think certain things and assume certain things about you that may or may not be right. And it's kind of fun for me to see them all kind of grow past that and go, you know, it's not my job to worry about what other people think about me, and my job is to be faithful with what I've given. And I'm all 6 of them, counting their in-laws, I'm just really proud of them.
I mean, that's really good. So here goes.
Yeah.
President of the United States of America.
You know, when you're in my role, no matter, people just say, well, gosh, you're going to run for president. I'll be just, you and I have been friends a long time. I just don't know that that's part of my DNA. You know, to be, and it's a little unfortunate, but to be president, you have to really, really want to be president, which is probably not great. We'd probably be served well by people who don't necessarily want to, that's not their driving ambition in life. We'd probably be served well by that. But, you know, when we had the last, you know, in the Republican primary, when there were 16 or 17 people back in 2016, I really knew almost all of them, and several of them were really good friends. And watching people go through the process, you have to think about, like, well, how would I do in that? And again, I'm just not certain that's what's in my DNA to do that. Having said that, it matters, and I never wanted to say anything that would discourage great people from running for office of any kind.
Do you have any interest in developing leaders?
Actually, I mean, there's a couple, 3 things that interest me. The whole leadership development deal, particularly in education. I mean, what I've seen in education, we talk a lot about different policies, but if you give me a great principal in that school, we'll have a great school. And so how do we develop and help people be great leaders in education? I'm really interested in, one of the things I've thought about is, how do we do a better job of explaining in this intensely divided partisan political world, of helping people understand, you know, what Howard Baker said, that the other fella might be right. The other side has an argument or a point. And so one of the things is like, whether it be gun control or, you know, taxes or whatever, like to set up an environment where people can say, I really would do want to listen. I don't agree with you on gun control, but I do want to understand why you think that way. And I think I think the country needs that right now, where we only listen to people who think like we do.
I want you to do leadership development with me.
All right.
Okay, I've 15 years and counting, Hallerin. These are the 4 or 5 things that I've learned. Make sure you do this, make sure you don't do this, and leave me with some possibility.
Yeah.
My guest is Bill Haslam. This is Anything is Possible.
Coming up.
I feel like I hit the lottery when it came to being blessed by family. You know, I still say I have the best, I'm gonna tear up, that I have the best dad there ever was.
I tried to recruit him to be president of the United States of America, but he was very artful in the way that you handled it.
You should hope for more for your country than that.
Bill Haslam is my guest on Anything is Possible. So take me to school. I've always admired you and loved you as a friend. Your optimism is something that I always admired. But there's something that I really like about you is you're very optimistic and very positive, but you also are metrics and goals driven.
Yeah.
Like, you believe in execution and getting things done. and knowing that we got a result, which is, it's a wonderful combination. So I've always liked to learn from you. You got me sitting on the couch, you're pouring into me, you're pouring into the people that are watching. Help me become a better person and a better leader.
Well, I've learned as much from you as I could ever teach you, so I'm not sure that fits. But I'll tell you what, if I'm sitting talking to folks, the things I tend to, in this role, we have a lot of younger people who work for us in the governor's office, people in their 30s, et cetera. And there's 3 or 4 things I always talk about. I said, the first thing, it really does start with humility. I always look to hire people who are humble because I've hired the other type and it doesn't work out. Those, stars, I don't care how great they are, if they think the world revolves around them, there's eventually going to be a train wreck. There just is. So I always try to hire people who are humble, don't think the world's about them. Second thing is I hire people who hustle. No matter what you say, that it's hard to replace hard work. And people who, everybody thinks they work hard, but the reason you need metrics is to actually measure, are there measurable outcomes that are happening? Because I remember one time we had somebody working for us and she said, I'm sorry, this is just too much work. I gotta stop. I gotta quit. And when she left, we didn't have to replace her. There was, so in her mind, she was working really, really hard. But so that's why you need those measurable outcomes. And I think the third thing is about being a curious person. I like to be around people who are curious. I love it that you and I were around Ken Burns, the historian, the other day, and you were asking him 100 questions, not just about history, but how he produces a documentary, et cetera. And I mean, the poor guy was probably tired of us. I mean, I'd been asking him all those questions, and you did the same thing. I love that curiosity and it wasn't just for yours, it was just about, I just want to learn.
Right.
And so those people who are, humble and hustle or humble, hungry, and curious, just feel like to me those are the people that then end up being optimistic. If you're curious, it's because you want to learn more because you think you can make a difference. The people who aren't curious, I think, end up cynical.
Talk to me about faith. If you're telling me about spiritual formation, and you're saying, Hallerin, just make sure you do these things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does start with, if you look at seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all those things shall be added to you. I mean, it kind of does start there, right? I mean, what are you seeking after? And it's so easy for folks like you and me to start saying we're seeking after that, but really seeking after something else. And that's why, again, that kind of morning private time, whatever you want to call it, I think is so important. The second thing we already talked about, but having people around you who are willing to say, Hallerin, sorry, I'm calling baloney on that. You're saying that, but here's what I see you doing.
Right.
I can't tell how much I've benefited from that, from having those type of people who will ask me the hard questions or tell me the hard things.
Coach me up about family.
Yeah, boy, I feel like I hit the lottery when it came to being blessed by family. I still say it. I have the best. I'm gonna tear up that I had the best dad there ever was, and I'll argue anybody with that. And I feel that same way about my whole nuclear family. And then, some people have marriages that are hard. I got Chrissy, and I just feel like I've been so blessed having somebody like her. And then 3 kids, all of whom are very different, all of whom grew up with the whole thing of being a Haslam and all that meant. And it just came out these remarkably healthy, they got their challenges like everybody, but remarkably healthy people who care about other people more than themselves.
What hit you about your dad just then?
I just feel that way. I just, he's not perfect, but he has lived his life so much about other people, and I just have seen that. And I've seen time and time again where he's been about something beyond himself, and then he's also been a person of grace in ways that it just amazes me. I can see people who have intentionally tried to hurt him, and he's kind of, then later they'll come back around and ask for his help on something, and he'll do it, and I'm like, really? Like, you're helping him after what they did? And he's like, oh, it'll work out.
When you see that and you experience that, it does do something to you, because it gives you the hope that you can do well and do good.
Yeah. Well, you know, grace is the best thing we all have going for us, right? Because we know we need it. And then when we see it in other folks, it encourages us. And that's, like I said, I think the idea of grace even gives you that kind of hope and optimism that you were talking about. This idea of, if I screwed up, yeah, man, I know way more times I've screwed up than, you know, every now and then I'll have somebody come, you know, saying something mean about me, and a friend will say, how can you take that? And I go, well, they don't know the half of it. You know? I'm way worse. But, you know, that sense of being treated with grace from God and from other folks, I think lends you to saying, I'm gonna have that kind of attitude instead of cynical.
Well, I want to thank you for being you, and I want to thank you for being used, and your spirit and your heart being open to God kind of putting you where He wanted you to be and connecting the dots in a way that is not only it's accrued to the benefit of you and your family, but beyond that, I would say you've served really well, and you will continue to serve well. But I thank you for that, and then I thank you for years of great friendship. Whenever I catch up with you, it's a warm, a wonderful thing, and just thank you for being you.
Well, I appreciate all that, but and we're not just here having a mutual admiration, but I can't miss this chance to say, the way you've led in this city for a long period of time, a long obedience in the same direction, if you will, I think has changed the tone of this city. And to have somebody like you that folks were listening to every day, instead of a more strident voice who was trying to stir things up, I think has led us to be a better city. So I'm glad I'm your friend.
Anything's possible. Thank you for being
Thanks,
here.
Thanks, man.
We'll see you next time on Anything is Possible.